It is this pervasive sense that no matter what you do, you will never be enough. And that's sort of the filter I think we begin from, that I have really spent, and I think a lot of what I call hard story people have spent the majority of our lives feeling like we had to arrive at a certain place, or we had to accomplish something or accumulate something or arrive at some sort of place of safety that would finally say, now I am enough.
What if your fears, the ones you think are holding you back, were actually hiding your greatest power? If that is something of interest to you, I'm so glad you're here with us, because today we're talking to best-selling author Mary Marantz, who is all about flipping fear on its head. So whether you've been struggling with perfectionism, people-pleasing, procrastination, or the, always fun self-doubt, Mary is going to be talking about how these patterns aren't necessarily flaws. They're not things we need to push away. They can actually be signals. And that when you learn how to decode them, you can stop playing small and start leading big. So we have so much planned for you today on this episode. Stay till the end, because you're going to walk away with a new perspective on fear, as well as some practical strategies to help you shift your mindsets and some steps to take starting today that might even help you move forward. So no matter how stuck you're feeling right now, this is going to help you, especially if you've ever wondered why maybe you feel called to do more, but sometimes can't seem to get traction. This episode is a roadmap. I'm Dr. Lisa Marie Bobby, and you're listening to Love, Happiness, and Success. Mary, welcome. I'm so excited to talk with you today. And first of all, congratulations on the new book. Where do we start there? Tell us about that.
Yeah, Lisa, thanks so much for having me. I'm so excited to get to hang out with you and dive in with you. Yeah, so Underestimated released April 29th, if you can believe that. So cruising out into the world now for a while. And I
Underestimated. I love that title, by the way.
Thank you. Thank you. And I feel like I've been spending about 45 years getting ready to write a book like that,
I hear ya.
For everybody who's maybe meeting me for the first time, I grew up in a single-wide trailer in rural West Virginia, and then ended up at Yale for law school. And so I am very familiar with the underdog trope, with the underdog role. I'm very familiar with being underestimated and underestimating myself. And, Lisa, I think a lot of people would think like a whiplash story like that, from trailer to Yale law, that would feel like some sort of moment of arrival. And I would is that the moment when you finally stop underestimating yourself? And when people ask me that, I always laugh, because I'm like, try this morning.
We take it with us all the way.
That's right. That's right. It kind of kicked off 20 more years of trying to achieve into worth and feeling like I had to prove other people wrong and show other people how far I'd come. And so we write the books that we need. So this book is very much my journey and full, dive into the deep end of what does it look like to stop trying to build from a place of proving people wrong about you, that to show them what you've done, and more about actually just showing up and doing the work you are called to do, and not letting this very boring liar that is fear convince you to keep playing small. Yeah.
Oh, what a cool story. Oh, well, I have many questions. Okay. But let's start with this. I mean, are you able to share how your experience in that single wide trailer in West Virginia, how it shaped your perspective? And I mean, I'm so curious to hear at least some of the story about how you arrived at Yale, but I could imagine becoming very aware of some of the differences between you and other people, and also the messaging that you brought in with you in that situation. So can you just talk a little bit more about your story?
Yeah. So in my first book, Dirt, which really is very much the story of the trailer to Yale Law School, there's this part where I write, growing up without a lot just does something to your brain. I can't explain it. Maybe it's the prefrontal cortex still developing. Maybe it's neural pathways grown closer over time at the repetition of bad generational thoughts turn bad generational patterns. I don't know. Maybe it's just inhaling all the mildew. whatever it is, it makes you expect to fail before you even start. There are a lot of different
Mm.
things you could call this, self-doubt, self-loathing, self-sabotage, this poverty mentality, a scarcity mentality. But whatever it is this pervasive sense that no matter what you do, you will never be enough. And that's sort of the filter I think we begin from, that I have really spent, and I think a lot of what I call hard story people have spent the majority of our lives feeling like we had to arrive at a certain place, or we had to accomplish something, or accumulate something, or arrive at some sort of place of safety that would finally say, now I am enough. Now
Mhm.
I've outrun
Yeah.
this, the hard parts of my story. And in Dirt, I actually liken that to this girl in a red cape escaping her way out of the deep, dark woods, the big bad wolf ripping at her heels. She runs because she knows if she stops running, it just might kill her. These breadcrumbs tearing at her skin and her clothes, leaving pieces of her behind like
Mm.
breadcrumbs. I run until I'm finally breathless and at last exhausted, and I look back over my shoulder and I can finally see it.
Yeah.
I am the girl in the red cape, but I'm also the wolf. And that voice in my head
Ah.
telling me to run and not stop running, that it will never be safe to stop,
Ah.
that voice is my own.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah, so
I got little chills when you
yeah.
talk. I am also the wolf.
Yeah.
Wow.
So just to kind of like finish the loop on that, in my second
Mhm.
book, Slow Growth Equals Strong Roots, I come back to that scene, this time from the perspective of the wolf.
Mm.
And, yet again, I've chased away this version of myself I was born to protect. I've scared her away. And it talks about at a certain point, the big bad wolf is now afraid of us. Because if the girl in the red cape can't stop running her way towards success, stumbling her way out of failure, stumbling into success, then it means the big bad wolf can't stop chasing her. And so we learn how to dig our thumbs into these wounds in its paws, the thorn in
Mhm.
its paw, to twist it in deeper, to send it roaring back into fight or flight mode anytime we need it. Because the real question is, what if I do all this healing and in the process I just disappear? What if I have to
Mm.
become ordinary, average? What if I lose all my drive?
Yeah.
And so that becomes kind of I think that's sort of leading into a book like Underestimated, about how do we stop playing small, but also how do we not have to use other people's doubts as jet fuel? Like, is there a more sustainable fuel source we can draw from in
Mhm.
order to stop playing small in the work that we're put here to do?
Yeah, no, that makes so much sense to me. It's as you're talking, I'm thinking, first of all, wow, like real deep parts work right there, Mary. I mean, like
Yeah, that's
wolves and
right.
children. I mean,
Can I
wow.
tell you that I
Oh,
wrote that before I ever knew about IFS? Isn't that wild?
but
Isn't
I
that
mean,
absolutely wild?
yeah, yes and no, because I
Mm,
think that the reason why IFS is powerful and it works so well is because it's really giving a language for a reality that we all
right.
experience. I mean, we are
Mm,
multidimensional, right? And so,
yeah.
but that's cool that you were tapped into that.
Yeah.
Um, but I get that, and and I just want to highlight the fact that even though maybe not everybody listening to this has the exact same storyline, I mean, how we can all relate. Like we were just chatting a little bit right before we started recording this. We were talking. So you're from West Virginia. I grew up in Roanoke, but I
Yeah.
also mentioned that I am a first generation American, and I
Mhm.
think part of that legacy is a ton of like survival anxiety, right? Like people who
Mhm.
emigrate here and like,
Right.
there's just this like experience. I've actually used that term myself to my husband on more than one occasion. Sometimes I feel like I'm being chased by a wolf. Like you just have to keep
Wow.
going
Yeah.
and going, right? In order to finally create this safety that
Mm.
never quite,
Yeah.
there's always something beyond that. And you're saying that what you did is really just like see the dance and
Mm.
start to identify these different parts and the relationships,
Yeah.
but like this core fear of like, well, if I'm not doing either of those things anymore, like, well, who am I? Because it's
Yeah.
part of you.
Right. Yeah, there's this
Wow.
part in Slow Growth where I
Mm-hmm.
actually talk about, like, what healing sort of feels like to me. And again, before I'd ever even learned about
Mm.
internal family systems therapy, or parts work, I said, I imagine that it's grown up me, little me, and the wolf in green pastures, and they're
Mm.
laying down, they're at peace, and they're playing. And it's like
Amazing.
all of these parts, of yourself coming back together. So that's just really wild. But I'll tell you something that came up for me when you were just talking then. And I have this kind of like working theory,
Mm-hmm.
based on nothing except my own brain, which is that, Appalachia generally, West Virginia in particular, and of course it depends on the actual part of West Virginia you're in or what have you,
Yes.
but that it operates a lot like first generation immigrants, or
Mhm.
first or people whose parents were immigrants. Like I feel like in my family, you know, go back 8 generations and we came over from we're Scotch Irish or what
Mhm.
have you. But I feel like because that family sort of came to Western Virginia and then just stayed there in
Yeah.
large part in isolation in the mountains of West Virginia, that got passed down so much that it didn't
Mhm.
kind of get
Assimilated. Yeah.
diffused, yeah,
Mhm.
as it was going down. And so I always really resonate with people who either
Yeah.
themselves or their parents are first generation immigrants. I think there's a very similar work ethic, a very similar scarcity mentality, a very
Mhm.
similar survival mode. And so one of the questions I have for you, if that's okay,
Of
is,
course.
we talk about that survival mode switch getting flipped and how hard it can be to kind of turn it back off.
Mhm.
And for me, that has often, I was just on a podcast the other day that was about something totally different. It was about like Gen X and millennials and Gen Z. And the question was sort of like, why is Gen X? Because I'm 1980, so I'm the last of Gen X, so
Mm.
kind of Xennial. And why is Gen X so sort of checked out of like the larger protests in the world or what have you? And I was talking about this idea of like when that survival mode gets switched and that self-preservation mode gets switched, you're self-preserving, but it can come across as like selfish, right? It
Mm.
can come across and like we would never think of ourselves that way. We know that's not what our heart is. But like when you kind of get stuck in that survival mode loop, it feels like that's all you can do.
Of
That's all your
course.
capacity is. So like does that
Yeah.
resonate with you? Do you have any thoughts on that?
Let me think about that. Well, I mean, I think that it informs your priorities, and so
Yeah.
like if I'm feeling anxious about, and it's subconscious, I mean, like I haven't always been in my life consciously aware of like what is driving me so intensely,
Right.
but I think certainly like, with how I spend my time, like what do I do, those kinds of things, there is this focus on trying to build something or do something or advance in some ways, and I think
Hmm.
that probably can be perceived as selfish if I'm not aware of it. Like I
Yeah.
need to stop myself sometimes, like,
Yeah, I feel like
yeah,
maybe like I need even like a better word than selfish, but like it's exactly what you're
focused.
describing. Yeah, well, it's
Focused.
it's 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 that feeling
Yeah.
of when I get to safety, then I can loop all these other people in, but
Hmm.
first I have to get myself to safety,
Yeah.
and it starts to feel like the target is constantly moving.
Hmm.
I need to just achieve a little bit more. I need to get a few more check boxes, and then I'll feel like I'm on solid ground, and then
Yeah.
I can see the bigger picture. I can serve the bigger
Right.
purpose in the world, but first I have to get myself to safety.
And that's a fallacy, that it
Yeah,
doesn't actually matter what you
right.
do, what you accomplish. You could go to Yale, right?
You
Like
really
you could
could.
start a successful business
Yeah.
and you're actually not going to feel any different. So I think that that's powerful for people to understand first and foremost. And also just really briefly, I want to segue into some other questions for you, Mary. And if there are any of our friends here hanging out with us who had this blip where they were like, IFS therapy, I do not know what they are talking about right now.
Mhm.
Please scroll back in my podcast feed or YouTube, wherever you're catching this. And I had the great privilege of actually interviewing Dr. Richard Schwartz.
Wow.
I was
Yeah.
so starstruck. I cannot even tell you.
Yeah.
Yes, it was amazing. And it was fascinating. He really explained his theory, parts work, how it all works. Just so incredibly insightful. And he also, do I have it on my bookshelf here? Lots of information about a workbook that he recently released. So even you
Mm.
guys, if you're not like in therapy, Dr. Schwartz has developed like self-help tools where you can access some of what Mary and I are going to be talking about together. So I'm a huge fan of his work, and I just wanted to mention that.
Yeah.
So,
But, like,
okay.
protective
Oh
parts,
yeah.
exile parts, shadow
Yeah.
work parts, yeah, yeah,
Yeah, definitely.
fascinating. Yeah.
So, one of the things that I was super interested in talking with you about, one of your core messages is around understanding fear
Mm.
in a totally different way. And that when you do that, different things become accessible.
Mhm.
Can you talk a little bit more about that core concept?
Yeah, yeah, a big part of it is really, like, a big part of the backbone of the book is that it's based on this idea that fear's a really boring liar, when you get right down to it. Like, fear is just so unoriginal. And I am a creative, besides being a writer
Mhm.
and wanting to be a writer since I was 5 years old, I'm also a
Oh,
photographer and I build a lot of businesses and, there
amazing.
so I really I highly value excellence and creativity and being very, I'm an Enneagram 4, a self-preserving 4. We could get into any of that if you're interested. Very strong wing
I
3.
recently discovered I was a 7.
Okay, I could
I
super
had
see
no
that.
idea. No
Super.
idea.
Now, do you know if you're a wing 6 or a wing 8?
I think I'm definitely a wing
Yeah,
6.
that's what I would
I
guess.
don't yeah, but, I thought for a long time I was an Enneagram 3,
Mhm.
and then I took some different tests, and I
Yeah.
was like, "Oh my god, that explains so much."
Mhm.
Yeah.
Well, what might be at play there, and you're not supposed to type other people, but you can maybe dig into this next, is
Oh,
I thought I was a
do it.
3 for a long time too, but then somebody told me to look up self-preserving 4s.
Well, and I could see that, like, with this exactly what you and I were just talking about, like,
Yeah.
that being chased by a
Yeah.
wolf, right? Like, having to excel, having to do things like, I think that that could probably show up in both of
Yeah.
us, like, that achiever
Mhm.
personality
Yeah.
that's probably not fully true.
Right, we think we have to
Yeah.
achieve to get to safety, but, like, a
Mhm.
truer I mean, they're all masks, but a truer
Yeah.
mask for me is the 4 and for you would be the
Mhm.
7. Like, when we're not
Mhm.
trying to achieve into safety, you're having fun and trying a bunch of
Mm.
new things, and I'm over here thinking about bittersweet, deep melancholy.
I love it.
Which is great too. But yeah, so gosh, what were we oh, yes,
We were talking about the understanding fear
mm,
in a different way. You
right.
said fear is a boring
Right.
liar.
So
Yeah.
being that Enneagram 4, I super value originality, excellence, innovation, individuality. We love not only being the best, we want to be the only.
Mm,
And so that has played out a bunch of different ways in my life. And so I am very, very attuned when somebody or something or some force in this case is really just being a bad copy and paste version of itself or of other
mm,
people, or it's just very like reductive or derivative. And so I coach women who want to write books and speak from stages and start businesses. And a couple years ago, Lisa had a bunch of back to back coaching calls where it was eerie how copy and paste the words coming out of their mouth were like the same sentences.
mm.
And it was happening, they were doing very different projects, different stages of life, but it was happening kind of in the same sort of place in the building of the dream. And it was like very infuriating to me because fear was winning. That's the part that was really bugging me is fear was it
Mhm.
was boring and it was winning. And I noticed that fear was doing this in my life as well. And so I without like any kind of introduction, just like hopped on Instagram and filmed a video and I said, it's all been done. It's all been done better. It's all been done by somebody the world actually wants to pay attention to. I can't start until it's perfect. I can't start until I am perfect. What if I start and the critics come? What if they say, who does she think she is? What if I try and I fail and I prove all those people who said I could never do it, that they were right about me all along? What if I start and I can't stay consistent with it? What if I don't have the bandwidth right now? What if my voice doesn't really matter? What if I don't really matter? What if it's already too late? And I said, fear is not your friend. Start anyway. Start now.
Yeah.
And that kind of laid the groundwork for when I was writing this book. I had two dots connect in a way that I had never seen them connected before, which is,
Mm,
in my opinion, the high that every writer is chasing. To actually, to somewhere in our limbic brain, this conceptual blending, novelty seeking part of our brain puts
yeah.
dots together and data together in a way we've never seen before. And that is, what if fear attacks creatives in particular because it is jealous that it itself is not creative at all? Short of being able to throw its voice so it sounds like you, because if it sounded like Morgan Freeman, we could catch it every time. And to be able to shapeshift these different masks so it's not a creative enemy, but it's a very slippery enemy. We catch it
Right.
coming in the front door as perfectionism and it's sneaking in the side door as imposter syndrome, right? So it can
Mm.
shapeshift through these different masks and it can throw its voice. But other than that, it is not creating anything into the world. It's not putting
Yeah.
anything in the world and calling it good. It is the
Well,
opposite
I
force of creation. And so, what if that is why it comes after us in particular? And then you have a question, but I'll also build on that about
oh, yeah.
it's not creative, but it is productive.
Yeah, I could see that.
Mm.
Not creative, but productive. But I also just, as you're talking, it's occurring to me that I think the creative people are particularly vulnerable
Mm.
as well
Right.
because the act of putting something new into the world, it's like this like here I am, reject me, like that
Right.
kind of thing
Right.
that is vulnerable and intimate to begin with. And I think people that have more certainty in what they do
Mhm.
than creatives, I think that they may be more buffered from that.
It's
Like
less
somebody in
subjective. Yeah.
finance, like, right? It's math.
Mhm. Right.
Not that you can't take risks in that, but that's interesting though. And I love the way you're conceptualizing this fear as like chasing you, coming in side doors.
Right.
Like, tell us more about this.
Yeah. Yeah, it is this very, I think a slippery enemy is a really good way of putting
Mm.
it, right? So, building on what I was saying a second ago, fear's not a very creative guy,
Hmm.
but he is a busy guy. And like any good productive overachiever, which always makes me think of that Taylor Swift lyric, like I'm so what is it? But I'm so productive. I cry a lot, but I'm so productive. That's fear basically. But he's a very productive guy. And so he knows that he has loads of people to go get them to self-doubt and self-sabotage and second guess. And so if you are already hiding in plain sight, if you're already playing small, fear's mostly going to leave you alone, right? Like
Mm.
fear never shows up when I'm binge watching a show on Netflix and says,
Right.
"You should feel like such a fraud and an imposter." It's like, "No, you're good. Keep at it. You're really good at binge watching this show. We do not need you doing anything else."
Mm.
Fear's going to mostly leave you alone. A little fear maintenance mode, some perfectionism, a little self-sabotage sprinkled in, you are all set. But I also talk about another characteristic of fear we need to know is you can drop a pin. This is the precise GPS coordinates where it's going to attack you, is a
Mm.
crosshair intersection where your gifts meet your story. Where your gifts meet your story is a crucial coordinate on the map because if I only showed up, Lisa, and used this very clear gift of words that I have, I can tell
Obviously,
you as
yes.
confidently that I have a gift of words as I can tell you I do not have an ounce of gift of song, very heartbreakingly to me. It's like Cameron Diaz in my best friend's wedding singing karaoke. It is not good. But I do have these words. And if I only showed up and used these pretty sentences that I know I can string together, these plays on words, these, wordsmithing threads of needles of sewing and stitching letters together, look what I can do, then I would be that kind of clanging gong or cymbal. My gift of words is only impactful in someone else's life if it is informed and infused with the empathy that was born out of the mud of my story.
Mhm.
That I have to work and operate from a place of, well, what breaks my heart for what is breaking other people's hearts, that kind of idea.
Yeah.
And fear knows this. Fear knows that if it does not attack you both in your gift and your story, if it doesn't get you on both axes, then you're going to be left with one of them, either your gift or your empathy. And so if you
Mhm.
have the gift of words, for example, fear is going to say, your voice doesn't matter. Nobody cares. Who's ever going to
Mm.
care about this? It's all been done anyway. If you have the gift of helping people, it's going to tell you how selfish you are to start this work, how selfish you've always been. If you have the gift of being a visionary, being able to see somebody for where they are, but also where they're headed, it will make sure you spend your whole life feeling invisible and unseen.
Mm.
And if you have a hard, unique, important story, then it's going to spend your whole life telling you it disqualifies you before you even begin. And
Wow.
so, if you show up and you start to operate from that place where your gifts meet your story and you're doing work that's actually going to change people, that's actually going to meet them where they are, that's actually going to change lives. Now you better expect fear to show up teeth bared and snarling. You're going to see just how hard that mask can land with a thud. And there's going to be a
Mm.
really venomous version of fear behind it because now you're an actual threat. You're a level 1 threat to what it wants to oppose in the world. And so that's when we start to see fear really show up and bring its best work. Even that, though, is still really boring and just broken, repetitive scripts. It's just the
Mm.
volumes turned up. And so we can start to flip the script to say, it is not when I'm doing work that I'm not meant to do. It's not when my work doesn't matter. It's not a sign. When fear shows up, it's not a sign, oh, maybe I shouldn't do it. It's actually the exact opposite. Fear has just shown up. Good. You must be about to do work that matters. Otherwise, it would be far too busy for you.
Mm.
Right. And so we flip this script, we move forward. Fear showed up. Good. I must really care about what I'm about to put into the world. I must want to create
Yeah.
with excellence and originality and innovation. And I want it to matter how it changes people
Right.
versus just showing off what I can do.
You are reinterpreting fear as a signal that you are on the right
That's
path.
right. Yeah.
Wow.
Because I'm going to tell you, the more I do work I'm supposed to do, the work I've been clearly meant to do my whole life since I was 5,
Yeah.
that the fear I have had more attack from fear in the last 5 years writing these 3 books than I did
Mm.
in the 20 years of being a photographer combined.
May I ask a semi-personal question? If
Yeah.
this is too much, I will retract, but
Okay.
I can only imagine how intensely that may have been coming up for you
Mhm.
when you went from West Virginia to Yale.
Mm.
Is that
Yeah.
true?
I mean, it sure did, it sure
Yeah.
did. I feel like I guess that's, like I think that's the rub though, Lisa, right? Like, it sure did 20 years ago,
Mhm.
and also there's some of those wounds that still feel as fresh
Mm.
today,
Yeah.
so even though I know you're right and I know that's true, being that sort of fish immersed in the water where I don't know how toxic it is, but I kind of being a writer allows you to see yourself
Mhm.
from that 30,000-foot view, like, I know that that's still there. So let's kinda
Right.
talk about it. Like, I get into Yale, I'm walking around that first year, there's this really beautiful part in my first book, Dirt, where I talk about wanting to buy this J. Crew cardigan, gray
Mm.
cardigan, full price, took a special pride in the fact that it was
What?
full price, because that's what rich people do, and it was sort of the uniform of choice, not officially, but I saw a lot everybody walking around campus in this. I
Mhm.
still have it in the drawer down here. This gray, charcoal gray wool cashmere blend J. Crew cardigan. I made this joke in the book about it was neatly folded on a shelf above newly freshly sharpened pencil skirts. Um,
Mm. It's a totem.
yeah, it's yes, and
Mm.
also a fun reference to You've Got Mail there. And so anyway, I buy this cardigan and it's full price, and I feel like I'm just now I'll belong, right? Belonging is a J. Crew sweater is what that section's called in Dirt. And I put it on and I talk about how it didn't make me feel different like I thought it would. I was just me, but me in a gray sweater, and like the wool was kind of clawing and scratching at my skin. The
Mm.
brand new tag in the back was itching on my neck. It just sort of reminded me how I still have to walk around in the skin I have to do life in.
Yeah.
And that whole first year felt like I was walking around with this hole in my heart that was more like a root canal the size of a chest wound, and when the cold air in the room would change and hit just right, all the exposed roots would go screaming back in full effect, and how I tried to backfill, like a landfill of gold stars and brand name labels and achievements and accolades to fill that hole
Mm.
in my heart. This sort of Pez dispenser of success, just keep the candy coming, this doling out these sugary sweet
Mhm.
rewards of getting everything you ever wanted. So it shouldn't surprise me by the end that it was not an filling, but an extraction that I would actually need
Mm.
most in my life to kind of realize like there's no amount of more that can make you stop
Yeah.
feeling less than. So we have to kind of go all the way back to the beginning, dig all that out, and figure out why we ever thought we had to push so hard in the first place.
Great point. And I love it too that yes, that experience was with you, certainly at Yale, but that it it remains and
Mm,
it's sort of by your side through these other chapters and phases of life. And that even as you started to put yourself out in the world and share your gifts with the world, it became very active. Now you've reinterpreted that as I'm on the right track. But I am also curious to know, and I'm sure our listeners are too, what insights have you gained about how to manage this differently?
mhm. Yeah, I think one of the most important things this book does, like really truly the backbone of the work that this book does, is it gives us the tools to be able to catch fear in the act.
Mm,
Like I mentioned that quote earlier about the fish don't know the water's toxic because they're so immersed in it. That means most of the time we're walking around thinking that we're just saying this stuff to ourselves. And for some of it we are, right? Like there is such a thing as we're our own worst critics and the way that we
mhm,
talk to ourselves and all of that. But we walk around just sort of there's this constant Johnny Cuff calls it a soundtrack. There's like a broken record. There's just a ticker tape of thoughts going through our mind. And it's so pervasive and we're so immersed in it. We don't even realize it most of the time until someone like me comes along and says, it's all been done. It's all been done better. It's all been done by someone in the world. That whole litany of things I read off.
mm.
Chances are there was somebody or a lot of people listening who were like, A, why are you reading my diary or my email?
Stop following
Stop
me.
it. Get out of my head. And B, I just got bingo up, down, sideways, and diagonally, right? Like all of them. And so when somebody comes along and is like, actually, fear's really predictable. Fear's really like it's like your quote unquote favorite TV show, and then they get to season 4 and it's like, "Really? This is the
Mm,
script now? Like we've done this already. Like you've done this episode before. You have nothing new to say, right?" And you start off loving the show and then you're like, "I just can't even watch it anymore because it's just so boring and so
yeah.
predictable. They're not even trying anymore." That's how I want you to feel about fear.
Mm,
When you can catch yourself, you're thinking a thought like, "Oh, who do you think you are? Or what are they going to say about that? Or, it's somebody's already done this better. If you can go, wait a minute, I just read this on page 34. One of the fun things I did when I was launching the book is I did an Instagram post where I was like, tell me the fear that keeps you stuck the most, and I'll tell you what page it's on in this book. I want you to know that it's so predictable, it's already been accounted for in the pages before you even said a word. And so if I can get you to that place where it's like, oh, I've seen the script before. Oh, I know that face of fear before, then you can cut fear off mid-sentence. And I was on this podcast called the This Changes Everything podcast with Sarah Rice. She said it's like the great and powerful Oz, right? This terrifying Oz who sends the cowardly
Right.
lion running. But when we pull back the curtain, it's just this little man standing back there. And I said, yeah, a snake oil salesman who wants to sell you on the grift that given the choice between creating nothing and creating even any kind of tiny failure at all, you should go on choosing nothing. And another year goes by and the clock goes on ticking and the world is worse for your absence. And so
Yeah.
just like we were no longer afraid of the Wizard of Oz once we saw who he really was behind the curtain, that's what we can do to fear. And so throughout each of the chapters, I'm giving you all these unexpected metaphors for fear. There's an
Mhm.
Edward Scissorhands problem, an Oliver Twist problem, a research riptide, a Princess and the
Mhm.
Pea. And so now you have these unexpected metaphors that are really easy for a human brain to recall.
Yeah, you're like dressing it up in different
That's
costumes
right.
and
Yeah.
and exploring it from these different angles. But I love it because I could see how through all of that, you're normalizing it for people, but you're also making it smaller. Mary, I love this. Hold this thought. On the other side of our break, I want to hear everything. Team, if you are sitting here listening to this podcast today, thinking about this is incredible, like so many things coming together for you, dots being connected, fireworks going off in your mind, like this makes so much sense. The next question that might be coming up is, okay, what do I do with this? And this recognition that maybe it's time to get a little more support so that you can not just connect with fabulous ideas, but get help in crafting an action plan that assists you in making these changes real in your life. And that is where evidence-based coaching psychology comes in. Now, I think we often think about the royal road to personal development as being psychotherapy. I love therapy. I'm a therapist. There's a place for it. But what most people don't understand is that therapy is not designed for personal development or actualization or even outcomes. It's behavioral health care. It is designed for the treatment of mental health conditions. And if that is true for you, we need therapy all the way. And if you are wanting to create real and lasting change in your life that is coming from your desire to learn, grow, and evolve, therapy might actually be quite frustrating for you, not empowering. A lot of people can spend a lot of money and spend a lot of time talking about things over and over and over again, gaining insight, sure, but action, not so much. Years ago, I noticed this as being an opportunity in my profession. I became a very proud board certified coach and recognized that so many therapists need this training. Therapy did not prepare them to take you where you really want to go. I developed a certification program to train therapists to become board certified coaches. And I'm having such a good time doing this. But why are we talking about this right now? Is because this presents an amazing opportunity for you. As part of my training program for therapists, I put therapists through an 8-week practicum where they get hands-on experience working with clients, applying what they're learning about how to use evidence-based coaching psychology in a really responsible and effective way. And who are those clients? My friend, one of them might be you. This is a learning environment. Therapists who have robust backgrounds know exactly what they're doing as mental health professionals, but are learning how to apply coaching. And this creates a fantastic opportunity for you because this is a very, very low cost way to get involved in the type of personal growth work that you might really be wanting and needing in a insanely affordable way. I am charging $49 a session to get involved in this. And now the one thing to know, is that this is a structured learning environment. This is an 8-week practicum, and it starts and stops in alignment with a cohort model. So we're only doing 5 of these practicums a year. The next one at the time of this recording starts on July the 14th. The one after that is in September. And if you want to get on board with any of this, come over to my website, growingself.com, tap on the therapy and life coaching tab, and then you'll see all kinds of information about how to get involved in this program. It's called Clarity and Confidence Coaching. Spaces are limited. We only have space for a certain number of people that we can serve with every practicum. And so come on over. Let's do this together. growingself.com, therapy and life coaching. You're looking for the Clarity and Confidence program. Register to hold your spot. And then as soon as this next cohort launches, we're going to get to work. All right. That is what I wanted to share with you today. I'm excited about this, and I hope you are now too. And now let's get back to our conversation. Okay, let me ask you something. If our friend Dr. Schwartz was here with us in this conversation, I think he would probably want to talk about the idea that many times the function of fear is protective.
That's right. Yeah.
What are your thoughts about that?
Yeah. So 100%. And in chapter 12, which is criticism is an
Chapter
inside
12.
job. There you go. Yes, 100%. That's where we really start to get into the internal family system stuff. Criticism is an inside job. It's talking about both criticism from others, unintended, I call them inherited limiting belief leaks from our families of origin, and then all of that criticism we're doing to ourselves. And Lisa, one of the first things I do is I describe my inner critic as Dear John. Is one of my favorite pieces of writing in the whole book. And I say, like, Dear John wears khaki pants or jeans crisp and creased from the iron. He wears, these wrinkle-free LL Bean shirts and a crisscross pattern of pale beige, boring colors like ecru and taupe and whatever. Ecru. I already said ecru. Whatever. Nothing that colors too brightly outside of his boring beige lines, right? Like to remind me to never color too brightly out of his boring beige lines. He, true to his name, tries to get me to break up with all my biggest dreams before they become a problem for anybody. And it just sort of goes on and on describing this guy. I call Dear John as my biggest critic, who thinks all my work is derivative and boring and so amateur. He hates that I talk about Care Bears in a very serious thought leader book. And that's how we first think about our critic. It's this bully, and there can be this season of needing to grieve how your bully has treated you. And then we get to the layer beneath, and that's the inner critic born as a protective part. That there was this time when you tried too hard, or you were too earnest, or you were too eager, or you were too much for somebody and you got hurt, and your inner critic said, well, let's never do that again. And I talk about Dr. Martha Sweezy, who's another IFS therapist, who walks through a script of introducing yourself as the grown-up in the room to this protective part that was first born to keep you safe like the wolf. And one of the things she has us do is to ask our inner critic how old it thinks we are. And we might be very surprised to find out it still thinks we're the 5-year-old us or the 10-year-old us we
Don't
were
run out into the street.
when it was first born to keep us safe.
Yeah.
And I was doing an episode with Britt Frank, who also does some IFS work and some work on procrastination and the science of stuck. And she said, I love that. And also, we should ask our inner critic how old it is, because there's a really good chance it might be a 2 or 3-year-old toddler who's just having a meltdown. It's saying, I hate you, you're the worst, but really it just might need a cookie and a hug. And so I think we kind of peel back the layers of that critic. And same way with perfectionism. There's a part where I talk about, in her own meddling, messed up way, perfect is just trying to keep me safe. Because she's seen me curled up in the fetal position when the criticism came flying in from the cheap seats,
Yeah.
So there is an element of that.
Right. The perfectionism, also protective. Like, if you could just be better, then the wolf won't get you.
That's
right. So let's work a little harder and do a little bit more. I hope Taylor's listening to this right now. She needs to. No, I'm just kidding. But these are great perspectives. Now, you just mentioned something a second ago that I'd love to hear more about. That the relationship between all of this and everybody's favorite, she said sarcastically, procrastinism.
Oh, yeah.
Procrastination.
Yep.
I think I just invented a procrastinism. What
It's
did
an
I just
ism. I
do?
like it. Let's go with it. Yeah. Oh, yeah, procrastination.
So how does this play into what we're talking
Mm.
about?
So a really cool thing, actually, I'm gonna show you this. I'm gonna pull this up closer,
Mhm.
for the video for anybody who's watching on YouTube.
Yeah.
I don't know that you're gonna be able to see this because that is rather bright. Oh, you can kind of see it.
Yeah.
Okay, see right
I'm seeing a
here?
compass.
So there's a big compass here, that's the
Uh-huh.
gold one that's really front and center, but when I turn the book right there, you can start to see just the hint right there. Do you see that? Just the hint of a really light underlay of a compass. So you see the dotted lines with the X marks the spot.
Okay.
Well, there's an right underneath it.
All right.
There is, it's very bright, so you can't see it, but there is an
Mhm.
underlay of a giant compass underneath it. And we did that on purpose. It's one of the Easter eggs in the cover. There are many,
Mhm.
but one of them is because the way that I write and the way that I talk about fear is there's a thing behind the thing.
Mm.
And so when we talk about procrastination, one of the things we begin with is like, what is it that we're really afraid of? And for a lot of people, myself included, the real fear is I'm afraid that I might not have what it takes.
Mm.
You know, if I, there's a part where I joke where like nobody wants to sit down and be given all the time in the world to write your fullest, best answer and then be graded accurately on that response. We do not want that because then we will have to come face to face with the edges and outer limits of our talents and abilities. What procrastination actually offers us is this double edged cop out, a double edged excuse where if we do pull it off in time and we're able to get the A on the paper, even though we turn it in with 23 seconds remaining, which is the story that opens that chapter, then we can say to ourselves, and just imagine how much better it would have been if I'd had more time. If we don't get the result that we want, and this is the one time when it doesn't work out and we end up failing,
Mhm.
we are not people who failed. We are not people who don't have what it takes. We were just people who were up against impossible circumstances created by ourselves
Mhm.
this one time. And so for me, I really procrastinate because I'm waiting until this thing I call the terror kicks in. The terror is the moment when, oh, I might actually forfeit the opportunity. Oh, I might actually not be able to pull it off this time. Oh, I might actually fail if I don't
Mm.
start working on it right now. And
Mhm.
in this weird, we fight fire with fire, I'm rubber, you're
Mhm.
glue sort of way, the only way to break out of the fear of what if it's not as good as I want it to be is what if I end up losing the chance?
Yeah.
What if I
It's
end up
actually
losing my
using
opportunity?
fear to
Using
your
fear.
advantage.
And it
Yes.
works. It
Mhm.
works. This is another one of those cases, like proving people wrong is jet fuel,
Right.
that I've used my entire life, where then at the last minute, it's like, oh gosh, I'm in
Mm.
a state of flow and it's as if I've never doubted myself at all and it all just pours out.
Yeah.
But the thing of it is, I'm never giving myself the chance to see like what is my fullest best effort.
Mhm.
Do I really want to live a life where it's like, well, it worked out? And that's something we talk about in that chapter is the difference between upward counterfactuals and downward counterfactuals.
Hmm.
Upward counterfactuals are, oh my gosh, I put this off until the last minute and everybody was really mad at me and stressed out. And there were lots of tense emails, but at least like I pulled it off at the last minute. The upward counterfactual goes, that felt horrible. And that really hurt my reputation with the team. And that was so stressful. And I really think I could have done a better job if I'd had more time. I'm going to learn from this.
Mhm.
The downward counterfactual is that exercise and at least. Well, at least I pulled it off. At least I got the A.
Right.
At least it all worked out. And ironically, the same avoidance of negative emotions that makes people procrastinate in the first place makes them do the downward counterfactual because they don't want to have to face the
I
pain of
could
learning
see
from it.
that. Right, the
Yeah,
rationalization is comforting.
right.
Yeah.
So we don't learn our
Mhm.
lesson. We repeat the
Yeah.
lesson until it's learned, only we never seem to learn it. And then we
Mm.
procrastinate again. So what is the fear behind the fear? That's mine. I don't know,
Mm.
maybe you have a different one. What's your fear that keeps you putting it off?
I think, okay, let's think about this a little bit more. Well, I mean, I think there may, because there could also potentially be other variables here that I put on my psychologist hat. But,
Mhm,
I'm somebody who identifies as having ADHD. That's a very real part of my experience. And so
mhm,
I think that sometimes when I don't do the things that I air quote should do, it's honestly oftentimes because I'm either prioritizing other things
mhm,
or I think I do have a kind of, I hate to use the word impulsive, but it's probably impulsive. Like it
mhm.
could be like, oh, I'm going to do that now because it seems like more interesting in the moment. So I don't
Yeah,
know that it's always like fear based for me. as much as a function of like the way my brain works.
Yeah, well,
But
and all of our
mhm,
brains and to a certain extent, like, you
mhm,
are right that the ADHD experience is its own unique experience, but in that chapter, I talk about Dr. Judson Brewer, who wrote The Craving Mind.
mm,
He says the standard habit loop is trigger, behavior,
mm.
reward,
Yeah.
and he said it's an excellent setup for survival and also procrastination, and what he means
Mm.
is, like, for survival, saber-toothed tiger, trigger,
Right.
run away,
Run.
behavior,
Mhm.
reward, brain, here's some dopamine, you survived,
Yeah.
congratulations, and our brains have a really hard time separating saber-toothed tiger from blinking cursor. So, blinking cursor feels like a threat, run, fight,
Mhm.
flee, freeze, fawn, one of those
Yeah.
2, 4 responses, and, for me, I will either go clean the whole house, flight, or I will sit on the couch and almost be dissociated,
Mm.
dissociated, freeze.
Yeah.
And so our brain rewards that. Go binge watch a whole season of Mrs. Maisel and eat M&Ms and Skinny Pop popcorn instead of writing that next chapter. Here's some
Mhm.
dopamine because you avoided the pain of the blinking
Yeah.
cursor.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
So the whole title of your book, I mean, it's called Underestimated.
Mm.
And so help us understand just that concept. How does everything that we're talking about right now turn into it's almost like when I think of underestimated, it's like there's a surface level, like what people believe about themselves, maybe what others believe about them, but that there's this covert operation going on
Mm.
this whole time, that somebody's actually capable of so much more.
Yeah.
That's what
Yeah.
that word means to me, but what does it mean to
Yeah.
you?
Well, for me, it is truly this like double-edged sword.
Mhm.
When I sat down to write this book, I actually thought it was going to be 100% about when other people do it to us. Because that has been my lived experience.
Mm.
I don't walk into the room and suck all the oxygen out of it. I'm an introvert. I'm a quieter voice. Um, I'm not going to be like the one who needs to be the center of attention. And most of those like networking cocktail hour parties that I ever find myself being forced to go to, cocktail parties are sort of my kryptonite. Chit chat
Mm.
is for sure my kryptonite. You will find me off in the corner with one other person, being like, "So tell me about your hopes and fears and how was your
Yeah.
childhood?" And so I've spent a lot of my life having people sort of overlook me until they saw the excellence show up
Mm.
in the room. So I went to a conference once as a speaker, and I was speaking after lunch, and I went into the lunch, and it was a cafeteria situation, so I had to go get my little tray, and go through the line, and then go find a table to sit at. It was like high school all over again. And I sat down at this table of women and they sort of immediately closed ranks. And we had been asked by the
Mm.
organizers to sort of talk to the attendees and, be conversation starters and ask about them and everything. So I'm asking questions and I'm just getting blanked, like one word answers. And I was like, okay, I'll just eat my chicken nuggets and it'll be fine.
I don't want to talk to you either.
And then right after lunch, I go across the quad and I'm the first keynote after lunch. And it was just a really, like, fired up, powerful talk, really emotional talk. I'm crying, people in the audience are crying. And at the end, the sort of queen bee of the group came up crying her eyes out, telling me her story, and she said, "Oh, I wish I had known you were a speaker. I would have talked to you more at lunch." And I said, "Maybe that's
Mm.
the problem," you
Yeah.
know?
Oof.
And so there's a lot of that energy when I think about underestimated. There's this really beautiful section. Maybe I'll actually, it's a very short section. Maybe I'll
Yeah,
actually just
please
read that.
do. I love it.
That's talking about the kind ones, the quiet ones, when other people look right through us. And so let me just find that real quick. For most of our lives, we've been the ones left out on purpose when the invitations were made. We don't seem at first glance to be one of the shiny, shiny, perfect people, so we get passed over again and again. There's always been someone louder, someone more outgoing, someone more popular with the crowds.
Mhm.
We are the last ones anyone would ever think would go on and do big things. We are the kind ones, the quiet ones, the ones so often overlooked. We are the tender hearts, the gentle spirits, the old souls so often missed despite all these see through layers of thin skin, the ones who never take up too much oxygen in the room. They mistake our kindness for weakness. They
Mm.
mistake our humility for not really mattering. They mistake our silence as us not having anything particularly interesting or important to say. And in doing that, the mistake they really make is that they miss it. The quiet one who is actually a prolific writer. the misfit who etches beauty from pain with every brushstroke,
Mm.
the hidden one who sings a new song and it calls heaven closer, the humble one who is in fact a brilliant business owner, the unassuming one who dances and every gesture forms a posture of prayer, the one who has a teacher's heart and it changes the trajectory of other people's lives, the overlooked one who shrinks into corners at cocktail parties, but opens their mouth to speak from the stage, and it's as if the whole room floods with golden light. It's
Mm.
so easy for other people to look right through us and miss the pure magic we hold inside. And years of accumulation of other people's doubts have now blurred and bled into one another, and once auto-tuned and amplified until they become the singular voice of reason in our own heads. Every day it tells us it would be safer not to show up. And so that's one side of the sword.
Mhm.
You know, that's a very real thing. That other
Yeah.
people just they don't have the eyes to see. They are not
Right.
visionaries. They do not understand a thing until it's already done. And so we spend most of our lives with people not really getting what we're doing until it's
Mhm.
done. And then they want to know how we did it. Right?
Right.
That's one side of the sword. And then the other side of the sword is when we're underestimating ourselves, I think a big part of that, Lisa, is we are underestimating what we believe we are capable of holding and stewarding well, what our
Mm.
capacity is, what we can be trusted with, what we can be the grown up in the room who can be trusted to hold. And so we underestimate our ability to lead a team or put together a talk and speak from the stage, to be able to handle the criticism, to be able to manage the payroll or the budget for something, right? We do
Mhm.
not think we are capable or that we'll be the ones to mess it up, that more will be our downfall, will make it about us. And so because we underestimate our capacity for what we're able to steward and hold well and respond to with wisdom, then we bow out before we even have a chance to hold it. So those are the two sides for me.
Mhm. Interesting. And so there's part of underestimating yourself and talking yourself out of your own competence, like your identity is wrapped up
Mhm.
in that. But then there's also this other piece. And I would imagine that part of the headline of your book here is that um, that we're in a culture that if it doesn't have success signals flashing, right?
Right.
Like people are like, oh, who should I pay attention to? And that as soon
Yes.
as somebody recognized your brilliance as a speaker, then you are all of a sudden very valuable
Right.
because of who you
Yeah.
were, and the reality having been, of course, that you were exactly that the whole time, that they just didn't
Mhm.
know. But I'm imagining that there's this part of having to disconnect from wanting that validation, praise, being seen from other people so that you can be there in that room, in that situation, knowing who you are the
Yes.
whole time,
That's right.
and that whatever other people believe about you is absolutely irrelevant.
100%. I would say that's a
Yeah.
running theme all through this book, this idea that you cannot prove other people wrong, that that's actually terrible jet
Yeah.
fuel. That if you rely only on that, there's a two-word indictment in this book
Mm,
of myself, and that
yeah.
two-word phrase is perceived slight.
Hmm.
There's this really fun play on words part where it's like, now we are the keepers of every perceived slight, the oracles of the uninvited, patron saints of the underdogs, these modern day alchemists who take other people's doubts and turn them into our own determination.
Mm,
And so perceived slight is, I'll use the real slights as long as they're working to be that jet fuel to, propel me forward. And then if
mm,
they run out and there's nobody in the room actively underestimating me, then I'll perceive them where I need to. Oh, that weird sideways glance. Oh, you're going to lunch and you didn't include me. Oh, I feel like you're hanging out without me, whatever the case may be.
mm,
Um, that when it doesn't actually exist, then I have to make it up in order to be able to keep moving forward. I have to twist the thorn in the paw of the wolf in
mhm,
order to keep running. And so there's this really beautiful section in chapter 14 that talks about how proving other people wrong is a powder keg. And there was actually this sugar refinery factory in Georgia that exploded in 2008. It was a really horrible
oh,
accident, killed a lot of people, burned a lot of people. And afterwards, when they were giving the report on what had happened, the CEO said that it was because sugar dust had built up in the silos. They hadn't been doing the housekeeping to clean up that mess, and the sugar dust acted like gunpowder, that it
mm,
literally became a powder keg. And chasing these, the Pez dispenser I talked about earlier, these sugary sweet rewards keep the candy coming while simultaneously feeling like you might disappear at any second, that if you don't achieve something in the next 30 seconds, you're not going to matter. You're going to just sort of like float away like these, atomized molecules on the breeze.
mm.
I became the sugar dust, and I wasn't doing the housekeeping to clean that up so that this proving people wrong, the internal combustion to keep moving forward, it was this burned out hollow shell of a powder keg.
Mm,
And so if we are going to truly have the renewable energy source to make it all the way up this mountain and then any mountains yet to come, we need something far more sustainable, which is, how does it serve?
mm,
When we make it about how I might get hurt, how I might be disappointed, or my success, my gold stars, my achievements, that is that very inward focus. And it's not what got me up off the floor 12 hours a
mm,
day writing this book, 12 hours a day for 12 months. It was not how might it go wrong, it was who might it help.
mhm.
And that is sort of the only thing that gets us out of our own heads and out of our own ways enough to say, I have this gift and I have this story and it needs to serve the world.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's beautiful. That's the true answer. That really being connected to your authentic self,
Mm,
your core purpose, your values, your mission, and that when you can kind of throw a grappling hook into
yeah.
that, right,
Right.
and allow that to be something that you stay connected to, it releases the um, power, right? Either paralyzing or motivating of
Mm,
fear in these other dimensions of your life, that core
yeah.
self piece.
Yeah.
That's beautiful, Mary.
Yeah, and I would just add to that, this came up for me just now, and I feel like
Yeah.
it is for somebody listening. So that's everything I said about how does it serve? How
Hmm.
is it for others? And then I also think there's a piece of this. My husband is always the one to remind me of this, he is a true artist. He's also a
Mm,
photographer. And that is creating with excellence for creating with excellence's sake. Right. That
mm,
as creatives, using our gifts and our story, I think the story still informs it, to put work out into the world that is truly just an act of excellence, an act of beauty, our
mm,
images as photographers, our words as writers, a sculptor, finding
mm,
the curved lines in a block of stone, whatever the case may be.
mm,
I feel like there's somebody listening, and you need to hear that just adding art and beauty into a world on fire is still an act of rebellion
mm.
and an act of resistance, and that alone is also a thing that can be that fuel source that drives you up the mountain, is that it is worth doing the work I was put here to do, even if I'm the only one who sees it, even if it's just, one other person who sees it.
Mhm.
That art itself is also worth fighting for.
What a beautiful truth
Mm,
to land on.
yeah.
This conversation has been such a pleasure, Mary. I'm so
Yes,
glad that we were
same.
able to spend time today. And I personally have loved just getting to know you and learning about your mission and
Mm,
your work, and just so valuable that it really is helping a lot of people
yeah.
make sense of their experience, and also some new ideas that can help them change that.
Yeah.
Wonderful.
Thank you.
Where can our listeners learn more about you, your work, your mission, your book,
Yeah.
what else you're up to?
Yeah, definitely. I think a great place to start is namethefear.com. That's from the subtitle, namethefear.com, where we have the whole first chapter. Chapter one, starting over, is a rolling boulder, up there for free.
Mm,
So you can download it and read it, get a feel for my writing style, which is very lyrical and also intellectual, poetic and pop culture. You're going to see a Jurassic Park quote right alongside a Sisyphus and his elusive boulder quote. So that's at namethefear.com. The first chapter you can read for free. You can also, buy the book there, or you can buy it anywhere books are sold. It's available everywhere. And midway down there, or you can go directly to achieverquiz.com. We also have put together, there are 5 different achiever types. And depending on your type, you're going to play small in different ways, and you're going to need different things to break you out of that and move you
mm,
forward. And so, whether you're the performer, always on your toes, needing to show yourself for sure, but definitely other people how far you've come, the tightrope walker who could care less who's clapping, but you need higher and higher death defying feats to feel the same amount of good. The contortionist who is our classic people pleaser. We contort because it is easier than to be criticized. The illusionist in the distance who believes all the conditions to begin must be perfect and they themselves must be perfect before they can even start. Or the masquerader who hides in plain sight. There's like 10 questions, super light and easy, fun questions. Takes like 2 minutes, 10 minutes
mm.
if you overthink it. And then in true Mary form, we go really deep with the results, what your type
Nice.
needs to quit playing small, name the fear, and move forward anyway. So that's at achieverquiz.com, or you can also find it at namethefear.com where that free chapter is. And then come over to Instagram. I'm at Mary Marantz, Marantz. Let me know which achiever type you got.
Excellent. Okay, I'm going to track you down on
Yeah.
Instagram and I'm going to tell
Good.
you about my achiever type. I have
Okay.
some suspicions, but I'll let you know for sure.
Nice.
Well, Mary Marantz, this has been such a joy. Thank you again for your time today. And
Yeah.
maybe we'll have the opportunity to speak again
Yeah.
another time when you publish your next book.
I would love that.